RCK Productions.
What is up, Crew Motorfest Racers? It is I, your wheelman, Alex Cornnut. I'm here today on opening launch day of the Crew Motorfest with some tips and some settings that you need to change, that you should set up, so that way you've got the best driving potential right out of the gate. There's a lot of really cool things that are not in many other games, and so I want to go through those with you, and I'm going to give you some really good tips as well, so that way when you're driving around, crashing and thrashing and racing, you're already set up and ready to go. Alright, let's dig into the menus, because that's where we're going with this video today. Guys, I play on PC, but it doesn't matter if you're on console, it doesn't matter what platform you're on, all of these settings will be applicable to you. Let me turn on my controller so that way we've got that in front of you. As soon as I tab out, it blanks out the screen. Okay, so from when you press the start button, you go here, press the start button again, that operates the side menu where you can go to the shop, which is where you buy all your cars. Their vehicle catalog, is where all of the cars are located at. So if you want to go buy a vehicle, they're all there. There's some recommended ones. Those will open up additional playlists for you to do, and then they're sorted by brand. So you can just go by filter and search any way you want. That is easy stuff. Customizations there, vanity options there as well, and there's bundles and some other stuff you can do. What we really want to dig into, you guys, is the options, because there's a lot of stuff that I think people are going to gloss over or not understand what it does, and so I want to go through those with you. There's some gimmies that everybody's going to know, but we'll go through it. So the UI, freestyle UI is important, you guys, specifically for when you're doing drift events. If you have that off, you're not going to see the drift points that you're accumulating. With that on, you're going to see how much you're getting from side to side, so make sure you have that turned on if you're going to be sliding around and drifting. The speedometer, pretty self-explanatory, you want to have that on. Crew widget, that is so you get a notification if somebody enters your crew or wants to race with you. I would recommend having that on, especially if you're in the Cornnut crew, you want to have that available. Minimap, the rest of this stuff is kind of up to you guys. I think that player names in free drive being on is cool, but emotes off is helpful. I had a couple situations where I was racing when the emotes were on, that popped up in front of me and it made it hard to see into the next corner because we were so tightly grouped up. So I run with those off. Just some food for thought. The rest of these things, pretty straightforward, not really that big of a deal. Importing your collection is right there in the options. So it should give you the opportunity when you get into the game if you want to import your cars. But if you skip over that and you don't, under the main game settings at the very bottom, that's where you import your collection. So make sure you guys do that if you played the Crew 2 and you have cars and you didn't get that opportunity at the start. Alright, in the difficulty settings, this is some things I want to touch on. Guys, this is important. Event difficulty, you do you, Pikachu. If it's on all the way hard, you're probably not going to beat the AI until you have full max level parts. I was struggling to beat the AI. I was winning, but it was like some actual racing happening on 4 out of 5 with basic level parts and a decent driver mod. So guys, you might turn that wherever you want. Now guidance, that's not a bad way to go. It tells you where to go for the events. I'm going to strongly recommend anybody who wants to get fast in this game, turn off your racing line. Forza has got a really good racing line that a lot of people are used to, where the arrows are up when it's red and then they fold down when it's green, and you can use that really well. Like if you see red, you know you need to be on the brakes. I experienced the racing line in this game a totally different way. It was full red and I was full throttle through those sections in a corner, and it wasn't giving me proper feedback. So if you're new and you're trusting that racing line, you're going to be slowing down in places you don't want. In addition to that, if you train yourself to using the racing line, you're going to miss shortcuts. If you're doing the grand race, you're going to miss opportunities for you to cut off the track and go down. If you're just laser focused following that line, you're going to find yourself getting passed by people that are cutting the corners, hitting shortcuts, cutting the track, and that's the kind of stuff that you want to be doing to be on the upper tier of racing fast. So make sure that you guys have got that off. Once you learn to drive without it and you learn it just glancing at the mini map, that's going to make you a much faster driver. So that is a huge tip I've got for you guys. Turn that racing line off. Auto braking off. Auto steering off. Turn that crap off. Rewind, that's pretty helpful. So you might turn that on. Nitro on, absolutely. That's no question. Make sure that is on. It's on by default, but don't accidentally turn it off. Now, global cockpit view, I have that turned off because I don't want to be putting me in there. But I like having it off. ABS, I would recommend running that on. If ABS is off, what is going to happen is when you just grab a fistful of brakes and you pull that brake in all the way, it's going to lock up the tires and you're going to be out of control. You're just going to go straight. So with ABS on, it makes it so you can turn and brake at the same time. That's a pretty big thing. Most guys know that. Now, traction control. There's opportunity here. I run it on sport traction control. I think that is a very happy medium. When you need the car to get sideways and it breaks the tires loose, it's going to. But at the same time, when you're in the dirt, it's not just so wild that it's uncontrollable. I raced with it off, I raced with it on sport, and I raced with it on comfort. Comfort's not too bad, but I like the cars to be a little more rowdy. I do want them to burn out a little bit, so I think sport's that happy medium. I'm going to recommend traction control on in some capacity. If you're in an alpha car doing the grand race and you get off in the dirt, thank me later. You'll want to have that traction control on, because if it's off, you're just going to sit there and spin, and it's really hard to regain control of your vehicle. ESP, electronic stability program, I have that turned off. I don't think it's necessary. With it on, it makes it really, really easy to drive the cars. But it's applying braking force to tires to get the car all set up. You don't want the car braking for you. You want to be the one in control of the brakes. And we're going to go touch on how to set up the brakes really well in a moment. Drift assist, I run that off. If you are going to be doing drift events, sport drift assist is pretty nice. It helps lock that car into a very linear, stable slide. I think you'll score more points with it off if you learn how to drive that way. But if you're looking for just a cush way to go through the drift events, I think sport's pretty sweet. Comfort is kind of like drifting on rails. You just set it, forget it, and it goes for you. So I run off. You guys do you. That's just advice. Counter steering assist. If you have trouble when your car starts to rotate and then you snap back the other direction and then you get out of control, turn that on. I've been running with it off the whole time. I've been coming from Need for Speed Unbound where some of the cars are a little rowdy. I don't have any problems with it. But if you find after driving with it off that you'll go to counter steer and it'll snap back and then you'll lose control of the car the opposite direction, turn that on. That's going to help you. Airplane handling assist. I've had it off the whole time because I've been playing the Crew 2 in the plane mode. I haven't had any issues. Big tip, number one, for the aircraft, you guys, steer with your rudders, meaning the yaw. So by default, that's the bumpers. That's really good. Get the plane flat and then just turn with the bumpers, and that'll turn the plane. In the grand race, you go through those checkpoints. Tip 2, you can crash or there's no contact in the checkpoints in the grand race. So any of the checkpoint markers, the circles or the ovals, if you're in the cars, you can go right through those. So in the planes, go to the inside of all of those and fly through it. You'll still get your checkpoint, but you're doing a tighter line through that. In the plane, if you're flat and you're steering with that rudder, it makes it really easy to control the plane. You're not flipping over and doing all kinds of crazy X-Wing Star Wars stuff. It's better. And for racing purposes, keeping that plane in control and doing very tight lines is going to help you go faster. Okay, that is going to be all the difficulty settings. Accessibility, I don't worry about that. That's motion blur, colorblind, all the other stuff. I run with motion blur off. I don't want the game to artificially blur the stuff coming by me. It gives you a really cool sense of speed, but if you're trying to line up a corner or line up a shortcut, that motion blur is going to hinder you a little bit. So I have it turned off. I would recommend if you're trying to get optimal performance for racing, maybe turn it off yourself. But if you're looking for an immersive, fun experience, making the cars feel really fast when you're going 200, 300 mile an hour, you might turn motion blur on. That's a preference thing, but I think for going fast, off is good. In addition to motion blur being off for me, I think camera shake off is really good too. When you're bouncing, when you're crashing, when people are hitting you, having camera shake off is going to allow you to have your sight lines on your corners, have your sight lines on your opponents, on rocks, on debris that you're going to crash into and slow you down. Having that off is going to make it a little easier to see. Touching on debris, another big tip when you're driving, you guys. Rock, fences, trees, anything that you can crash through is slowing your car down. So make sure that if you're racing behind somebody in the grand race, for example, and they go through a rock wall to do a really nice path, try to line up behind them and not crash into that same rock wall. They'll slow down by hitting it. You can come around them after you go through that same gap. Avoid obstacles to the best of your ability. In some other games, obstacles don't slow you down that much. In this game, it's a big deal. So be aware of that. The terrain types, another big tip here, matter a ton. If you are in a rallycross vehicle, the dirt road is faster than if you're in the full off-road. Tarmac is faster than the dirt road. It's pretty simple. Most people would realize that, but the game takes that into account. So make sure that you guys are aware of that. Terrain slows you down. You can use that to your advantage. We go full initial D right out of the anime. On the inside of a corner, when you're setting yourself up for that, you're going to line up, let's just say it's a right-hand turn. If you put 2 tires in the dirt, it creates drag on that side of the car and slows that car down. You can enter a corner going way faster than you should, dip 2 tires in the dirt, and hook around that corner way faster than you would if you were just in the dirt or if you were just on the tarmac. And so if you guys get good at setting up your lines, getting your car lined up, hanging 2 tires in the dirt, and then looping around those corners, you will find that your car turns faster and you're getting out of those corners with a lot more exit speed. It's a great way to gain a lot of ground on people if they're in front of you, and it's a really good meta tip. I've been using it since the beta, and it's just as much important today as it's ever been. So make sure you guys are taking advantage of that. Drafting, huge in this game. If you can line up behind somebody and get in the draft, you are going to have so much extra speed, so you don't need to use as much nitrous. When you're drafting someone, lay off from the NOS, just chill out. You let that draft carry you up to them and pass them, and then save that nitro for getting out of the next corner. The rest of this stuff, racing line, we already turned that off, so you do whatever you want to do. Video settings, that's personal preference. Audio and language, personal preference. We're going to dig into controls. There's some stuff here you guys need to see. I'm going to explain it to you. It's important. I run manual gearbox. I think it's pretty sweet. That's personal preference, you guys. All this stuff, whatever, vibration for tactical feedback. If you've got a really nice controller that's got vibration in the triggers and resistance in the triggers, it's really cool. But do your thing. Go to steering. We're going to talk about steering linearity. You'll see that I've got a V that goes out like that on the screen here. I've got my controller on screen as well. The dead zone is the first thing we'll talk about. That's the middle gap. If you have thumbstick drift, which is where the thumbstick is giving constant input when you're not actually doing anything, it'll look something, I'm going to exaggerate it, but it would look like that. It's where the thumbstick's pulling to the right all the time, okay? To get rid of that, this game gives you the ability to change your dead zone. When you gap out your dead zone, when you're holding your thumbstick over that same amount, you'll see on my controller that is on display, I'm holding over, but you can't see that. It's not until you get into the zone to show that you're actually turning. So come in here and check if you have any thumbstick drift. If you do, gap that out enough to where your thumbstick is no longer giving input when you don't want it to. I have great thumbsticks on my controller. No thumbstick drift of any kind. I can run it at 0. But guys, if you have a little bit of drift or whatever, set it at 5, set it at 10, whatever you need to do to make it so you don't have any gray showing up on that thumbstick when you're not putting in any input. Linearity. This is something we need to go over. A lot of guys are not going to understand how this works or what it does. Okay. The top of the bar, let me see if I can get my mouse out. The top of the bar here, that's 100% steering input, meaning you're holding the thumbstick all the way over, okay? So as I hold it all the way over there, as you can see my little guy, let me have him wink at you, his little eyes. When that's 100%, it's at the top. When it's just a little bit over, it's right there. What this is doing is how much it turns the wheels. So if I'm holding it halfway, which is about, let's call it 50%, it's like right around in there. It might be at the edge of the gray. That's 50% over, but the wheels are only turned about maybe 15% of the car. So the car, when you're holding half over on the thumbstick with this setup, the wheels are only turned about 15% of the way. And so it slopes, and as you put in more thumbstick input, it's going to make the wheels turn a lot more on the back half of your thumbstick input. So as you're holding over, it's very extreme towards the end of that. I think a good setup, hold on, let me go back to this where I want it for custom. Get my dead zone where I was back at there. Hold on, no dead zone. I prefer this shape. When I'm steering, my initial input, I always want to be steering at least a little bit, like a little half, like little micro corrections is not something I do a lot of. And so I want to have the most control. Like you'll see that here we're about 65, maybe 70% up the bar, but we're only half done on the thumbstick tilt. So as you apply more thumbstick turn, it's gonna, that last half of the thumbstick swing is about 30% of the overall bar there. What that allows you to do is when you're in a corner and you need to make a correction, if you're smooth on your thumbstick and you're just giving it a little bit of input, let me try to, you're just giving it a little bit, not holding it all the way over, it's going to allow you to make corrections mid-corner. I think that's important. So I prefer this shape. I think it's good for me. I'm smooth on the thumbstick. I don't tap. You don't see me doing this. If you're a tapper, I would say that your linearity you might want to do something like that. If you're going to be tapping, you want those wheels to be going all the way over and kind of an instantaneous thing. So that way, if you're just doing little taps, they maybe aren't getting that aggressive. That's a preference thing, but that's what steering linearity is, you guys. Set the dead zone so your thumbsticks aren't giving any input, and then set that curve to where you have the most control where you need it, which I think is on the back half of that steering input. So now that we've gone over that, the highest, this is another thing. If you're here, you reach max steering angle at about 75% steering input, okay? So that last bit right there at the top does nothing. Like that's max steering input there and max steering input there, but I'm only holding the thumbstick about 70% of the way. So I would say running that on the low end of things is crazy because you only have a little bit of steering and then it's max the last 3/4 of the way. Running that all the way to 100 puts it right at the tip. So when you're at the end, you're putting in max steering input, and everything less than that is less on the wheels. I know that's a long-winded explanation, but hopefully that explains it to you guys because I think there's a lot of people that aren't going to understand that. For throttle, it's the same thing, but it's only with the trigger. So come in here, make sure you don't have any trigger drift or trigger input that you're not looking for. Make sure there's no gray there. If you do have gray, take that dead zone and move it out. So you'll see that my little controller there, you can see that it's kind of changing color in the gray. I'm giving throttle right now, but it's not showing up until right there. So the idea is you want to move that curve to wherever the least amount possible where it still doesn't show input. And so if you've got good thumbsticks and there's no input, run it all the way low. Good to go. The linearity. This is your curve. You can be pretty smooth. You can just do a straight line like that. If you're smooth on your triggers, good to go. Make sure that you pull the trigger all the way and it goes all the way to the top. Huge thing. If you pull it all the way and it doesn't always go to the top, like some Xbox Elite 2 controllers, I've got one, it was giving me some problems, go and take that highest and back it off so that way you're getting maximum throttle no matter what. If you pull the trigger all the way, you want it to be 100%. So just make sure that wherever you're pulling that trigger all the way, it's 100%. And then the linearity is, like if you do it this way to the extreme curve, I'm giving about 75% of my trigger there, but we're not even at half throttle. And then the last little bit is a lot of swing. I think that curve's kind of dangerous because you really aren't worrying about so much on the throttle input at the lower RPM, but at the top, if you get out of the gas just a little bit and need to correct your line and tighten it up a little bit just by getting out of the gas, I think having the curve more that shape is nicer because then you're going into a corner, you're going a little too hot, you just get out of the gas a little bit. Or you're rolling on the throttle and you want to be smooth, that's going to help you have a really smooth throttle. It's very slightly increasing, whereas if you have it like this, there is no smooth throttle. It's and full speed and full speed. It's harder to be smooth. You want to be smooth on the gas, so I would say kind of middle of the road or maybe even a little bit like that. So it's on the gas early and then the last bit you have lots and lots of control over that trigger input. It'll help you guys be fast. Same thing with the brakes, just reverse of the throttle. So make sure you can just get full brakes. You're running ABS. Very rarely do I not go full braking. Sometimes, but very rarely. That is going to be all the controls and the steering inputs. A couple of tips that I think you guys need. It's pretty solid. I'm going to drop a video on a bunch of good cars for the Grand Race based on what we know right now from all of our beta testing. They've made a lot of changes, and so we've started retesting some of the cars to find out what's good, and I'll do a video on that next. But I wanted to get this out there for you guys. I think this is some really good info and tips. If you learned anything from this, drop a comment down below. Help me beat the YouTube algorithm. It's me out here. Well, it's not. It's we. It's you guys and me. I can't watch my own videos. I am super thankful to you. If you are new to the Crew Motorfest, subscribe. I'm going to be dropping content all over the place. Sometimes 2 videos a day, depending on what we find. For those of you guys that are new to me and my channel, we had the biggest crew in Need for Speed Unbound, world record holders across the board, the fastest guys in the game, the biggest tournaments, giving away the most money, raising the most money for charity, and the best builds in Need for Speed Unbound. We're going to do the exact same thing in the Crew Motorfest. I'm going to be giving tutorials on how you guys to do the summit each week, good cars to get, great ways to grind money. Anything I can give you guys to teach you, I'm going to do that. So apply what you can from what I can teach you and get fast in the game. Join my Discord. We've got an awesome, thriving community. Buckle up. Let's race. You guys have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.